Okay, let's get into it. This deep dive is, well, it's a bit different. We're tracking a life that seems to operate at maximum capacity, but across fields that feel, almost diametrically opposed.
Absolutely. You have the rigorous, incredibly rule-bound world of federal law on one side.
And on the other, the vulnerable, expansive, almost boundless realm of lyrical poetry.
We are diving into the truly multifaceted existence of Manuel del Valle y Colón, a man whose professional life, and we're talking a life dedicated to systemic change.
Big change.
Oh, huge. Think Supreme Court level legal groundwork, chief administrative law judge roles, a career of incredible structure.
And then at the same time, his personal philosophy, which he captures in this volume, Omnibus Poetry to the Intensity, is all about this profound spiritual and linguistic exploration.
It's a fascinating duality.
It is. And our source material for this is just so rich. We have a whole stack of detailed biographical notes, the full history of his, frankly, dizzying legal career.
Dizzying is a good word for it.
But maybe the most compelling thing we have is a set of personal testimonials, including a handwritten inscription from none other than Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
And of course, the poetry itself, which is really the key to all of it. Our mission here, for you listening, is to try and synthesize this.
Yeah, to get past the resume.
Exactly. We need to move past the CV and try to understand the governing principle he names himself. Intensity. I mean, how does a person maintain what the poet calls wholeness and authenticity when you're navigating these incredibly high-stakes environments?
Right, like litigation and, federal bureaucracy.
We're really trying to find the point where the lawyer ends and the poet begins.
Only to find out they might be the exact same person.
I think that's the core of it.
This central paradox, this intersection of legal structure and lyrical liberation, that's where we find the real aha moment, I think. We're tracking the moment this individual seems to have realized that all that external success, that incredible rigorous career in law, risked creating what he describes in his own poetry as an internal drone.
A hollowed-out professional.
Yes. And this deep dive, it's really a map of how he used poetry, that internal work, to survive the very public demands of justice. So to understand that intensity, we have to start at the beginning, the foundational architecture of his life.
Where it all started.
New York City. East Harlem, October 1948. Manuel del Valle's formative years were spent in public housing projects.
And these are such critical details. He started in the Carver houses on East 102nd Street, and then later, when he was 9, the family moved to the Douglas projects.
Which is over near West 102nd and Amsterdam Avenue.
Right. And these aren't just addresses on a map, are they? They are. They're geographical markers of a very specific New York experience.
And a specific set of socioeconomic pressures.
Exactly. Pressures that, you could argue, drive a thirst for structure, for systemic justice later in life. You see the system's flaws up close.
And you see his roots, his cultural identity, right there with his parents. His father, Manuel L. del Valle Roman, was from Atillo, Puerto Rico. His mother, Providencia Colón del Valle, from Moca.
Which establishes that foundational cultural connection right away. The theme of home and exile that comes to define so much of his poetry, it starts right there, the tension between New York and Puerto Rico.
He attended public schools, PS 72 and PS 179, before making what feels like a defining intellectual jump.
A huge jump.
In 1962, he gets into Brooklyn Technical High School. And for anyone who doesn't know, Brooklyn Tech is, well, it's monumental.
It's a powerhouse, a huge competitive college preparatory engine.
That move and his obvious success there, it just shows an immediate, intense dedication to using education as a path forward, a way out and a way up.
Brooklyn Tech really did act as an intellectual crucible for him. He was in the college prep program, of course, but you look at his extracurricular profile, and it's clear he was testing the limits of every discipline he could find.
It's not a narrow focus at all.
Not in the slightest. We see him in the Free World Club, the polling squad, and this is fascinating. They're actually conducting polling for New York City elections.
So he's getting hands-on with civic mechanics as a teenager.
He's in the debating society, survey, and then my personal favorite, he was the manager of the fencing team.
I love that mix. The manager of the fencing team and the top debater.
Right.
It speaks to a mind that valued both.
Yeah.
The precision, the strategy of a duel, and the power of articulation of the argument.
Well said. But the most revealing evidence of who he was back then, of this early identity, it comes from a really surprising source.
His classmates' yearbook inscriptions.
Exactly. They didn't see him as just a smart kid or the guy who, ran the fencing team. They saw him as a thinker.
Give us some examples.
Okay, so Bruce Thompson wrote, "To my favorite philosopher, Robert Snyder, wish him best of luck in your search for complete knowledge."
Complete knowledge. In high school.
I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah.
That suggests a kid who was already thinking cosmologically way beyond the next exam.
Absolutely.
What else? Robert Esposito called him Tech's great philosopher and debater. We also see Richard Rosen dubbed him the king of quotes.
King of quotes. I like that.
And Robert Unger wrote, "To an amateur historian." This is so fascinating because he wasn't waiting for Princeton or Yale to grant him these titles.
No, his identity as an intellectual, a historian, a philosopher, he was already fully formed and recognized by his peers by the time he was, 17?
That is an intensity of self-definition that's it's remarkable.
But here's the crucial piece, I think. His focus was never purely abstract, was it? It wasn't just philosophy for philosophy's sake.
Not at all. He was intensely focused on community action through the Aspire Club and El Nuevo Mundo.
And for you listening, Aspire is a really important national nonprofit. It focuses on Latino educational and leadership development.
And he wasn't just a member. He was elected Issues and Actions chairman of the Aspire Club's federation.
So he's working alongside people who would become major political figures, like Wilfredo Caraballo and Fernando Ferrer.
Right. This is where the philosopher learns to be an advocate. He's being trained in the nuts and bolts of advocacy by the very best, including the founder of Aspire herself, Antonia Pantoja.
So this isn't just an after-school club.
No, this is practical training.
Yeah.
It's about connecting the big systemic issues like educational inequality with direct, organized, on-the-ground action.
So the philosophical curiosity that his classmates saw.
It instantly translated into the practical groundwork for what would become his entire legal career. The two were never separate.
The intellectual intensity then just launches him onto this remarkable educational journey.
Yeah.
And it's not a simple linear path. It feels very deliberate.
Very deliberate. After Brooklyn Tech, he's selected for the Yale Transitional Year Program, or Yale TYP. This is from 66 to 67.
And that program was specifically designed to help promising students from maybe less traditional backgrounds transition into the intense rigor of an Ivy League environment.
And his performance at TYP was clearly strong enough to open the doors to Wesleyan University. But he gets to Wesleyan, and he doesn't just, stay on campus and go to the library.
Of course not.
He immediately turns his academic time into advocacy time. In the fall of 1968, he takes an entire semester off campus.
And what's he doing?
He's working with groups like the Edwin Gould Foundation for Children to actively recruit minority students for these elite institutions. He was essentially getting academic credit for doing crucial, on-the-ground civil rights work.
So again, knowledge for him was always preparation for action. It was never passive.
Never. And his pursuit of cultural knowledge was just as intense. It was global. It was deep. He got a Huff grant for identity research. He studied Spanish literature in Madrid.
Yeah, Wesleyan's program there.
And then, and this is so critical, he spends the summer of 1969 at the University of Puerto Rico in Rio Piedras.
So he's going back to the source.
He is. He's studying the history, the literature, the political science, and he doesn't just take notes. He actually prepares a syllabus for a college course on the subject.
He's creating the curriculum.
He was addressing the absence of his own history in the American curriculum by creating the curriculum himself. It's just so proactive.
That intense focus on identity and really on institutional change, it perfectly sets the stage for Princeton.
Right. He transfers there in 1969. And his majors are a perfect reflection of his commitments: history, Latin American studies, and Afro-American studies.
A precise intellectual cocktail.
It showed his commitment to the broader black and brown experience, not just his own specific cultural heritage. He saw the connections.
And his activism naturally didn't skip a beat. At Princeton, he founded the campus Latino organization.
He's out there actively recruiting Latino and Latina students, and he achieves university approval to institute one of the very first Ivy League seminars focused solely on the history and politics of Puerto Rico.
That's building institutional change from within. It becomes a hallmark of his entire approach, doesn't it?
It really does. But the most stunning example of this integration, where the student philosopher becomes the foundational legal architect, that comes from his senior thesis.
A History of the Puerto Rican Student in Public Education, 1945-1969.
This was not just a paper to get a grade.
No, it was immediately put to work. A chapter of that thesis was drafted into a detailed memorandum for Senator Jacob Javits, where he happened to be interning.
An incredible opportunity. And that memo was then incorporated into a U.S. Commission on Civil Rights hearing. but even more significantly.
It was used by the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund, PRLDEF.
To frame the actual complaint for the landmark civil rights case, Aspera v. Board of Education of the City of New York.
Let's just pause on that. His undergraduate homework became the foundational legal architecture that would define the fight for bilingual education in New York.
It's breathtaking, the intellectual rigor directly fueling the legal battle.
So he graduates from Princeton in '71 and goes straight to Yale Law School on a John Hay Whitney Fellowship. This is the absolute peak of legal academia.
And you have to think about the intensity of that environment. His classmates included people like Clarence Thomas and Lonnie Guinea.
He was operating in truly rarefied air.
And yet his academic work, his undergraduate work, was already serving the people on the streets of New York City.
So what's fascinating here, when you step back, is the sheer intensity of focus. It's sustained over a decade. It propels him from managing the fencing team at a public high school to crafting academic work that immediately serves as the groundwork for major civil rights litigation.
That trajectory, it just defines knowledge not as this passive thing you accumulate.
Right, not as a collection of facts.
No, it defines knowledge as a deliberate weapon for justice.
So the moment Manuel del Valle y Colón graduates from Yale Law in 1974, he doesn't take the fast track to a corporate firm, to Wall Street wealth.
No, he plunges directly into the engine room of systemic change. He joins the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund, PRLDEF.
Straight into the trenches of civil rights law.
And his impact was almost immediate. As a trial attorney there, he worked on two monumental cases. First, the one we just mentioned, Aspera v. Board of Education.
Which resulted in the consent decree mandating bilingual education.
Right. It fundamentally changed the educational landscape for thousands of limited English-speaking children in New York City. It protected their identity, their ability to learn.
An incredible win. And the second case?
Pabon v. LIII. This one ensured bilingual notice to Puerto Rican and other Spanish-speaking claimants who were trying to get unemployment benefits.
So these are tangible, foundational wins. They protect the vulnerable from being lost in a bureaucratic machine just because of a language barrier.
It's about access, making the system work for everyone.
After this really intense period of litigation, he moves into federal service.
Right. He joins the U.S. Department of Labor, Office of the Solicitor. He's there for over a decade, from 75 to 87.
And this is his time enforcing policy, right?
Yeah.
He's prosecuting federal labor law violations.
All across New York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico. So he broadens his scope from just education to protecting workers across entire jurisdictions.
And yet he never stops being the scholar.
Never. In the middle of this incredibly demanding federal career, he gets a prestigious Rockefeller Foundation Fellowship. This is 83-84.
To study at the London School of Economics, the LSE. And his employer, the federal government, held his job open for him.
Which is a testament to how valuable they considered his intellectual contributions. They knew he'd come back with even more to offer.
And he used that time at LSE to prepare a thesis on, let me get this right, the jurisprudence of Puerto Rico before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Which was later published. And he follows that right up with a Ford Foundation Fellowship in 86-87 to research national origin discrimination against Hispanics.
This sounds like intensive work.
Oh, it resulted in a 400-page monograph.
400 pages. And the key findings were distilled into a significant legal article toward a language-based national origin modality.
And it was published in the Harvard Journal of Hispanic Policy.
Let's just pause on that jargon for a second. What does that title really mean? What was he arguing?
He was essentially arguing that discrimination based on someone's language or their accent should be recognized as its own distinct and powerful form of national origin discrimination.
So he's using that scholarly intensity to push the boundaries of legal protection, to give lawyers a new tool.
A new framework, exactly. After all this time focusing on policy and research, he transitions into roles of mediation and judgment.
He moves through these administrative roles, like arbitrator, impartial hearing officer for special ed cases.
It feels like he's constantly seeking positions where he could apply the law not just to prosecute, but to mediate conflict and advocate for those with the least amount of power.
The pinnacle of this period, it seems, came with his appointment as Chief Administrative Law Judge, or ALJ, of the New York State Division of Human Rights.
From 1991 to 1995, and he was the first Puerto Rican to ever hold that position.
And the sources are clear. He intentionally prioritized the most complex cases.
Yes. Racial discrimination, sexual harassment, and AIDS discrimination cases. These are cases that require not just legal acumen, but a profound empathy for marginalized people.
Later, he spends time in managed healthcare, and then for 16 years, from 2004 to 2020, he's the chief ALJ for the Social Security Administration, but in San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Bringing it all back home.
Exactly. And that is decades spent hearing evidence, rendering objective justice, and synthesizing massive amounts of complex data.
It's the ultimate expression of a mind that is just relentlessly focused on structure and truth.
So this is where the synthesis, for me, just really shines. The sheer intensity of his legal career.
Which would be enough for 3 lifetimes.
For 3 lifetimes, right. And it was mirrored by an equally intense commitment to education. He held appointments all over the place.
Adjunct at Fordham, visiting lecturer at Princeton School of Public and International Affairs, visiting lecturer back at Yale College.
An associate professor of law at New York Law School and Fordham Law.
And his teaching was never generic, was it? It was always directly linked to the identity he fought for in the courtroom.
That's a great point. At Yale College, for instance, he taught courses on the history and politics of Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican experience in the United States.
And he was the founder of the undergraduate Puerto Rican organization there, Despierta Boricua.
So he wasn't just instructing. He was building the institutional structures to ensure the next generation didn't have to fight the same identity battles he did. He was paving the way.
He was.
But with all this focus on structure and rigor, the relentless logic of a law, wasn't there a risk that his teaching would just become academic and procedural?
A fair question.
How did he make sure the lawyer didn't just analyze the human element right out of the classroom?
I think that's a key question, and the answer seems to be rooted in mentorship. The testimony of his former student, Dr. Daniel Ibarrondo, who is now an associate dean, illustrates this perfectly.
What does he say?
Ibarrondo recounts this deeply personal quest for his own identity. It was spurred first by his mother's advice to always analyze things from multiple angles.
Good advice.
And then by his 6th grade teacher, Miss Malinowski, who told him to question everything. And this intellectual hunger led him to what he jokingly calls UCLA.
The university at the corner of Lenox Avenue.
Meaning the bookstores. He was trying to find knowledge about his own culture, his own history, on his own.
Only to realize, after going to Puerto Rico, that the formal curriculum itself was colonized. It was structured to erase his history.
That profound absence, that intellectual void, eventually brought him back to his professor, Manuel del Valle.
And what was that relationship like?
Ibarrondo describes del Valle as the bridge between my questions and my life's work. He said del Valle taught him how to conceptualize and articulate knowledge about law and Puerto Rican history.
And crucially,
how to professionalize those questions. He instilled the idea that your intellectual life and your professional life must serve the same authentic core. You don't have to check your identity at the door.
It's incredible. The same person arguing cases in front of federal judges is also founding the Princeton Seminar on Puerto Rican History.
It's that synthesis again.
And this dedication to mentorship, it brings us to this really remarkable story involving Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Yes. So while he was teaching at Princeton, he worked with a Dr. Frank Ayala, who introduced him to a young Sonia Sotomayor.
And the connection lasted.
It did. Years later, he was invited by his Yale Law classmate, Justice Clarence Thomas, to attend her Supreme Court investiture.
And the inscription she wrote in his personal copy of her memoir, My Beloved World, it just speaks volumes about the role he played for her.
It really does. She wrote, "Manuel, you were my first role model, someone with a passion for fighting for change. Thank you for all you have done for so many and for what you continue to do, Sonia Sotomayor."
My first role model?
It's so powerful to be recognized by a Supreme Court justice as her first role model for fighting for change. It just underscores that his advocacy was always rooted in mentorship.
It made his influence generational.
Exactly. It became institutional and generational, not just momentary. His teaching, his legal architecture, his advocacy, it all flowed from the same spring. An intense commitment to justice rooted in identity.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time mapping the external architecture of his life.
Yeah.
The action, the law, the politics, the education.
What he did.
What he did. But that kind of relentless external action, it requires a soul, right?
Well,
Sustaining philosophy to power it. So let's turn the lens inward now.
Into the internal life, the why he did it.
Exactly. Unified by this one concept he named his volume of poetry after: intensity.
And defining this core concept, it starts with his linguistic approach. The volume is titled Intensity, sure, but he immediately gives you the characters for it in Chinese, Kangdu, Japanese, Kito, and Thai, Hamkem.
So right off the bat, he's signaling this isn't just about an English word.
No, he's showing that this philosophy is universal. It's informed by his deep linguistic study, which included all those languages plus Taino traditions.
This insistence on deep translation, he calls it both linguistic and emotional. It tells you that this philosophical exploration is going to be just as rigorous as his legal analysis was.
He's looking for the universal truth of intensity, not just a casual, everyday word.
So how does he define it?
The dedication of the book defines the philosophy itself. The volume is for all who have led intense lives, and it states that life, like acting, offers fleeting moments of intensity, and only readiness allows one to meet them honestly.
Readiness allows one to meet them honestly.
So intensity for him is preparation meeting opportunity. It's demanding authenticity in the face of these fleeting, ephemeral moments.
It's the constant state of readiness a trial lawyer needs.
Applied to the soul, exactly.
Now we can start to connect that external life to the internal necessity. The themes he explores in the poetry, they feel like the scaffolding of his soul, the structure that held up the immense weight of that legal career.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. He writes about time, for instance, not as a schedule, but as a moral stance.
A moral stance.
Think about it. For a civil rights lawyer spending decades fighting for systemic change, time can't just be a calendar. The work is never truly done.
So the intensity has to be sustained by a belief system, not a deadline.
Precisely. He also explores the body as a site of truth, a threshold for honesty and compassion.
Which is a fascinating contrast.
Yeah.
In the courtroom, the body is restrained, disciplined, formal.
Right. But in the poem, it can be the raw, unvarnished truth. That dichotomy shows the tension between the structured environment he worked in and the need for personal, physical honesty.
And then there are the big questions.
Always. Loss, memory, artistic witness. He views grief as an invitation to preserve what's been lost. He prefers ritual over rupture.
If you're fighting for a community's history in a courtroom, you have to have the poetic capacity to honor its memory and its laws internally.
You have to. Other themes reinforce this need for an internal refuge. Transformation and return, meaning, language, stillness.
He positions art as a constructive refuge from all that external noise.
And always, this intense focus on ethical care, especially for the vulnerable, and the protection of childhood innocence. The intensity of his legal career was so clearly fueled by the poetic desire to protect the very things the systems he fought so often crushed.
So this is really the crux of our deep dive, isn't it?
I think so. The sources describe Manuel as someone who does not merely live life, but interprets, examines, and elevates it through words, vision, and action.
He's using the analytical tools of the law structure, data, relentless inquiry.
And he's fusing them with the tools of poetry, vision, emotion, lyrical precision to elevate his own human experience, to make sense of it all.
His own biography reflects this so perfectly. He was born in New York, but now he resides in Puerto Rico.
So his life narrative mirrors those poetic themes. Passage and return, home and exile, memory and transformation.
He is living the tension he writes about. He's the exile who returns, the traveler who transforms, the scholar who brings the knowledge back home.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, intensity here is more than just passion. It's not just about being emotional.
No, it's about focus.
It's about focused integration. It's the unwavering commitment to justice in the world of law and authenticity in the world of art.
In every field, the courtroom, the poem, the painting, he's asking that one central, massive question.
What does it mean to be human here?
And the poetic themes, they really show us the internal architecture that you would need to sustain decades of that kind of external action without sacrificing yourself.
It's the ultimate counterpoint to fragmentation. The world constantly tries to fragment us, right? You have your work self, your family self, your private self.
His life seems to prove that real success, real wholeness, lies in having oneself, intensely dedicated to being whole. Okay, let's move into the specifics of the poetry itself now, which brings this whole philosophy to life through these incredibly potent metaphors.
Yes, let's.
We can start with this need for philosophical liberation, escaping the shadows and what he calls the scaffolding of controls.
The opening poem is a direct critique of the constraints of modern urban society, which, of course, he experienced firsthand growing up in New York.
Right.
It urges the reader to escape the tall structures that block the sun and cast permanent shadows in wind canyons of man's making.
The urbanity itself is a form of oppression. It limits your view,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively.
And the philosophical goal isn't just a physical escape, it's a shift in consciousness. He wants us to fly side by side with others, to determine our own trajectory, and to make a vow to live intensely.
That intensity is the chosen life path, then, not the one that's mandated for you.
Precisely. And this external oppression is mirrored by the internalized systems of control. He critiques the scaffolding around identity and the architecture of limitations.
Imposed by what?
By everything. The invisible rules from the church, the school, the family society. For someone who made the leap from the projects to Yale Law, you have to imagine the pressure to conform, to adopt the appropriate scaffolding, must have been immense.
He argues that the fear of being cast aside constricts freedom, stultifies the mind, bankrupts the soul.
That fear, which is built into the scaffolding of expectation, is what prevents us from being whole.
So what's the solution he offers?
A return to authenticity, which he often symbolizes with nature. The poet urges us to break down the scaffold, dismantle the barriers, and return to the village or the natural world.
A place where freedom is the marker, caring is the way, and where being whole is the goal.
The images of jumping into a river or climbing a tree are all about undoing the babble of urbanity and reclaiming a sense of harmony.
So for you listening, this is a key takeaway. Intensity in this philosophy is about dismantling those artificial constraints to get back to who you authentically are. The most intense action you can take might be tearing down your own internal scaffolding.
But intensity isn't just about triumph and freedom. It's also about the raw, visceral confrontation with deep trauma.
And the mechanisms we invent to survive it.
The poetry offers this shockingly dark metaphor that illustrates emotional suppression in the face of just profound loss.
It's a brutal image. He describes the intensity of being one's own executioner in an electric chair, pulling the switch not to kill, but to stimulate the brain, to forget the trauma of the death of both parents in a car crash.
It's a horrific, visceral image. And you have to ask, why include something so raw in a volume written by a highly successful, respected judge?
I think it's because it captures the sheer destructive willpower required to just function when you're under unbearable pain.
It shows the emotional cost of attempting total control over yourself. The result he describes is this dullness that eliminates most emotions. No more smiling, no more joking, no more sharing a moment of joy.
The subject becomes highly functional, disciplined, minimal, the perfect corporate cog, maybe.
But at the cost of his core sense of humanity, he becomes useful, but listless. The poem suggests that while this terrible action eliminates the immediate emotion, the nightmares persist. He keeps reliving these shock treatments that kill everything that truly matters.
So the intensity of professional control is fundamentally undermined by the intensity of the suppressed trauma.
Exactly. And you can contrast that destructive form of control with the intensity of pure, unadulterated grief.
He has another poem about this.
Yes, he describes a man returning to a rocky shoreline where his younger brother drowned a year before. The man was miles away, studying, pursuing his own life, and now he has to face this gray sea and gray sky.
An environment that shows no mercy for his emotions.
But in that vulnerability, there is a kind of purification. The tears, he writes, refresh the soul, replenish the heart. And critically, they provide a reason for living on in the honored memories of his brother.
So that's the difference between destructive intensity, the electric chair, and redemptive intensity, the tears.
One fragments the soul. The other, though incredibly painful, propels life forward through wholeness.
We find another powerful metaphor in his work for the, for the ambition of the academic and the advocate. He calls it the failed ladder.
This one is so telling. A man tries to pierce the skies using fireworks on a ladder.
An absurdly ambitious goal.
Right. And of course, the ladder just burns and collapses, and the heavens are completely unaffected. They don't even notice.
And this failure is a massive, intense lesson in humility and in focus.
The failure teaches us that life is both compression and expansion. We shouldn't be seeking creation above the heavens through these grand, abstract, often impossible gestures.
But beneath it, on Earth.
On Earth, by making more of our immediate horizons and continuing the quest for a better tomorrow, we have to build the worlds of our choosing right here where we live and act.
It feels like a direct critique of intellectual hubris.
I think it is. The intensity should be directed at the ground level, using law and poetry to impact human lives directly, not just to reach for some kind of theoretical perfection.
And the search for truth, he argues, also requires an intense rejection of simplicity.
The world is not Manichaean, he writes, meaning it's not a simple struggle between absolute good and absolute evil.
Reality lies in the middle.
A perspective that is absolutely essential for a judge or an arbitrator who spends a career mediating conflict. You can't see the world in black and white.
He says intensity defines the parameters, but change is possible where extremes become unacceptable.
And to mediate that conflict, to make the world more compassionate, empathy has to be raised as a core value. We have to understand the constraints that trauma, misunderstanding, indifference, and hate impose on other people.
Which makes honest dialogue the absolute key.
The key to resolution, to survival, and to the flourishing of love. This is the poet informing the judge. You cannot rule justly without empathy.
The question of intensity also touches on how we present ourselves to the world. There's this image he uses of a black and white picture of only half a face.
Just a single eye, one nostril, half a mouth. It calls all of your attention to what is missing.
It's such a powerful metaphor for self-fragmentation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe an inadvertent result of living a high-profile life that demands you wear different masks.
I think so. He says we hide what is most valuable to us. An insight, a concern, a dream. We only offer these fragments of ourselves, and we leave others to guess at our true personhood.
The intense commitment to truth and service that we've been talking about, the poetry suggests, has to exist far beyond the frame of the public photograph.
It has to be a whole thing. Then he turns that lens on relationships in modernity.
The dilemma of ephemeral relationships. He critiques this superficial world of selection and rejection where choice is meaningless.
Why meaningless?
Because everyone is homogenized into an ideal that does not exist. We're all chasing the same filtered, photoshopped ideal.
And this desert of choices, he calls it, forces people into constantly cycling through partners. Life becomes instant, and it passes instantly.
This inability to commit, to be constant, it defines a reality that can't take root or last.
Intimacy, the poem argues, requires stable soil. It needs a place where it can be nourished and flourish in good times and bad. It requires the intensity of commitment, not the convenience of instant replacement.
But true friendship, he says, offers a counterpoint to this disposable modernity.
He describes friendship as something initiated by random accidents that then evolves, like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly.
It's forged in vulnerability.
It is, and it allows people to confront a world where fate can dictate outcomes, but where love and friendship can undo fate in unexpected ways.
Then finally we look at the prepared actor.
The embodiment of intense preparation for a fleeting moment of perfection. The actor is in his red shirt, blue jeans, sneakers. He knows his one single line. He knows his character's entire backstory. He's practiced kung fu. He's ready to cry on cue.
The preparation is total.
And for a moment, when the scene is perfect, he says all time was suspended.
A moment of pure, unified intensity.
But it's fleeting. The actor quickly changes back into his street clothes and returns to the real world, knowing that fortune rewards those who prepare.
The intensity is brief, but the preparation, that dedication to craft and authenticity, must be total and sustained.
And this is the final, deeply resonant contrast, the one that really synthesizes his life's tension. We move from the actor's disciplined intensity to the corporate analyst's destructive intensity.
The corporate analyst is also intense, right? Working 14-hour days, 7 days a week, chained to the computer monitor.
This person breaks the complex world into lines of data. They distill verifiable trends, focused entirely on probabilities and equations in a world devoid of feeling.
This person is doing exactly what a judge must do, analyzing data, but without the anchor of the poetic soul.
And the cost is catastrophic. The poem calls this person a primal victim of the screen, a highly paid drone whose soul is being drained away.
They are forced to keep their humanity secret in the bottoms of their heart.
This is the intensity of professional productivity without any philosophical or emotional integration. It's a life of external success purchased by internal fragmentation.
In this section, it ties everything back to the dilemma for you, the listener. How do you achieve that intense productivity without sacrificing your soul?
The analyst understands conformity and deviation from the norm, but they've lost the capacity for joy, for genuine human connection.
Manuel lived in both of these worlds.
Yeah.
He had to be the disciplined analyst to write that 400-page monograph on discrimination.
But the poet was necessary to prevent him from becoming the drone.
The poetry is the key. It's the mechanism for maintaining that secret humanity and keeping it alive.
So when you pull it all together, Manuel de Valle y Colón's life demonstrates this unique and powerful synthesis. The intellectual rigor of the law, that capacity to structure arguments, to analyze vast amounts of data, to relentlessly seek justice.
Ease is matched, and I would argue sustained, by the spiritual honesty of poetry, a practice that demands vulnerability, questions norms, and defines authenticity.
He used his academic background to provide the legal architecture for major civil rights change, creating institutions, protecting vulnerable people.
And then he uses poetry to provide the spiritual architecture he needed to endure a life dedicated to that very change.
Intensity is the catalyst. It's what allows those fleeting moments of action or insight or emotion to become the honest markers of a meaningful life.
And true knowledge, as his life shows, requires integrating the entirety of your experience, the trauma, the triumphs, the academic preparation, and those spontaneous moments you find in nature.
This source material consistently suggests that life is both compression and expansion. If we live intensely, we expand our horizons. We move beyond the limitations that are imposed on us.
The challenge is choosing the right kind of intensity, the one that's rooted in wholeness, not in fragmentation.
His life really teaches us that the highest intensity isn't found in the courtroom's victory or the poem's perfection. It's found in the internal process of holding both of those things together at the same time.
So we'll leave you with this provocative thought, directly inspired by the poet's journey, from the housing projects of New York to the halls of justice. If the goal of living intensely is to transcend our immediate surroundings and build the world of our choosing, what scaffolds, whether they're physical like urban constraints or internal like manufactured expectations, are currently blocking your view of your own horizon? The intensity is already there. The question is where you choose to direct the focus for the sake of your own wholeness.